What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. So we have made it 9 weeks, actually 10 weeks, because we had, I think, a week off. So we're 10 weeks in to Dexter Original Sin. We just had episode 9 drop a few days ago. So we are going to jump into our summary and review of this episode, and then overall how we feel where this season, or this one and done season, has gone, and how it's performed, and we're in relation to the overall, as I've been calling it, the Dexter verse, and whether or not we still feel that this prequel series was necessary. Does it really change anything as far as our opinions or how we looked at the original Dexter series? Because again, we know once this is done here in roughly 4 or 5 months, we're gonna get Dexter Resurrection, which is supposed to pick up where Dexter New Blood pretty much ends, or where Dexter New Blood ended, based on the additional footage we had on episode 1 of Original Sin. So again, we are at episode 9. We have one more episode to go, the finale next week. So let's jump into episode 9. Now, forewarned, there's going to be spoilers, heavy spoilers, as we normally do. So if you have not watched episode 9 and you want to watch episode 9 without being spoiled, I would highly suggest go watch episode 9, then come back and drop a comment in the comment section. Let us know what you thought, but also, finish watching the video. Let us know if you agree, disagree with our analysis and our ranking of this particular episode and the show overall after 9 episodes. So let's get into some of the details here. So I think the way this episode 9, which I'm a little surprised they waited so long, because again, since there's only 10 episodes, we had a lot of information packed in here. A lot of, I would say, somewhat useful information as it relates to not just the captain, Aaron Spencer, who's played by Patrick Dempsey, but we also got a more insight into present time, and I say present time as it relates to Original Sin's present time. Brian Moser, who we know is Dexter's brother, and he's obviously older than Dexter, but we're seeing him in present time, and we have now confirmed, which we knew in the last episode, episode 8, that he was probably the NHI killer. This now just confirms that he is in fact the NHI killer, and we actually see him follow through with one of his kills, and even learn as to who his targets are and why they are his targets. We also see a bit more of Aaron Spencer. I don't want to say spiraling out of control, but he is starting to spiral, for the simple fact that Dexter's now starts to take steps into taking the captain out as far as one of his victims to get on his table. So we see a little bit of that. We also get a additional glimpse into the history of both Brian and Dexter as they were kids, and how it came about that Dexter was adopted by Harry and Deborah but Harry and his wife, now Doris is her name. I don't know why that escaped me for a moment. Harry and Doris, as far as why they kept Dexter, and they actually initially adopted Brian, but then why that didn't pan out. Now back to Deborah, we see some life-altering decisioning for her, and what led her to become a police officer, which I thought again was very interesting. So that's where we're gonna go as far as a lot of the details. So I'm gonna hit on some key points in no particular order for this episode, which I thought are worth bringing up, but I will try and keep it in as much order as possible. So Bobby Watt, as far as what we saw from episode 8, he was shot in the neck. We know he was rushed to the hospital. He is still currently, even in this episode, in critical condition. And we now know that Harry ends up telling Maria, after he's confronted, about his connection to Brian Moser and Laura Moser. Now, he doesn't mention Dexter at all, and really for this episode, Bobby is, again, in critical condition. He's in a coma. He only really has one small part as far as any speaking lines or any impact, and that's with Harry. And again, it's a very brief thing as far as Harry talking to Bobby, which he believes is still in a coma, but obviously Bobby heard him, because, or at least the tail end, because he comes to and says something to Harry. So we know now Maria knows that Harry stole the file and Maria's looking into what he's trying to cover up, but he's trying to obviously divert any attention from Dexter as far as that file goes that he took, and any files that might be like cold case files from that time, since he did come clean about that. And in this quick scene, we see Angel Batista. We haven't seen Angel Batista really that much throughout this entire show. He's been here, there, just kind of jumping in and out of the show. Obviously, it's a prequel. It's supposed to be focusing on Harry and Dexter. But as one of the main players or characters for the original series of Dexter, again, he's not playing much part in the prequel. Just really to know that he is there in the background somewhere. So I think it might be a bit of a waste of even having him there. I mean, we know he's around, but I don't find his character really adding much to the show at this point. So we continue on as far as the show goes. Harry eventually convinces Spencer, the captain, to send a search. So this is a backflash. He convinces the captain to send out a watch party for Laura because he can't find Laura or the kids. But in doing that, he has to admit, and he does admit, that he has been sleeping with Laura, which eventually then leads to him having his badge pulled. So he lost his badge. Now he's a uni or a uniform officer, and they go start looking for it. So we see the search in the shipping yard and all these shipping containers. We see that playing out because in the original series, we really only see them opening the door. We really only see Dexter until eventually they bring in Brian's character. But we see that play out now. We see it play out, the search party that's happening, and they're going through container through container. Not going through is in opening each one. They have to have probable cause to open it, but they do eventually come to that point in the episode as far as the flashbacks go. So next key point is Dexter, obviously knowing Spencer is the kidnapper, he's the killer. He breaks into his apartment to take him out, use the M99 on him, but he doesn't realize that Harry has given him a ride home. So Harry comes into the apartment as well. So Dexter realizes he needs to get out of there quickly and quietly as possible to avoid being detected or spotted by either one of them, and he does manage to do so. So now Dexter has to wait a little bit longer in order to get the captain on his table for what he's done, as far as the judge's son and even his own son. So next point that we move on to, Harry has lied to Dexter. Now this is one of the first times we see that Harry has lied to Dexter. When the next morning comes, Dexter, Harry's having breakfast. Dexter says, "Hey, how's the hunt going for the serial killer?" And Harry says, "Yeah, there's no connection, not a serial killer." And Dexter knows he's lying because Harry realizes it's Brian, doesn't want Dexter to find out. So again, he lies to him. But now this is where we see Deborah mentioning, "Hey, I've dumped Gio, no longer involved." And obviously Harry's happy to know that. And finding out now that Bobby has been shot, Deborah wants to donate, be part of the, helping out by donating blood. So he asked Dexter to give her a ride to the police station. So now we have Deborah there at the police station as well. So again, I think this is just a pivotal part that this is where Harry no longer has any trust, but can't trust Dexter with this information as it relates to the NHI killer. So we keep moving on. Next point I want to call out is now that Maria knows there's a connection between Harry and Mary Moser and Brian, she now goes into looking into the cold case files, look up Brian Moser's file. And Camilla, you may remember her. We haven't seen much of her in the series, but she is the one that is in charge of that department, sitting at the desk, comes down there, and however couldn't find anything about his past. So this was anticipated as far as Harry believing that Maria would do this, because as soon as Maria leaves, Camilla then manages to, she obviously hid Dexter's past. She was part of that process with Harry, which is why no connection could be found, and they couldn't unearth any, Brian's sealed file. So she immediately calls Harry, says, "Hey, you were right. Maria came down here asking questions, looking for information, but she assured Harry that nothing was going to be found, no connection would be found." So Harry was anticipating she was going to do that. Now, we keep moving on through the episode. Next point I'm going to call out, which is Harry and Bobby find Dexter and Brian in the shipping container. And as we saw in the original series, the entire shipping container is filled with blood. As soon as they open the doors, it comes pouring out of the container. They immediately don't even know if anyone's alive, but then they hear the children, Brian and Dexter. They hear them. Then we see that they're alive. Now, this is a pivotal point here. So Harry rushes in, picks up Dexter. Brian's holding his hand, protecting him. He picks up Dexter and kind of just leaves Brian behind. And it makes no bones about leaving Brian behind. And Brian's like, wait a minute, what the hell? I think this was the next stepping point in the spiraling down of Brian's character as a sociopath. Not only what we saw earlier on in the season, but this fact that he was just disregarded by Harry and only focusing on Dexter, leaving him behind, because then Bobby's the one to come in and direct Brian out of the container. And we then see Laura's body chopped up. Now, I thought this was interesting because as we are leaving the container, the camera's panning out, focusing on her body, and it's been dissected. I don't say dissected, but the chainsaw was used to put her in various pieces. As soon as I saw that, this reminded me of why Brian might be, when he's the ice truck killer in the original series. Why he cuts up the bodies the way he does is because that's the way he saw his mother cut up by the chainsaw. So I think, in my opinion, I think that's why Brian does his kills the way he does, is because of how he saw his mother killed. Again, that's just my opinion. That's just my theory. So moving back over to Deborah. I know we're going through this pretty quickly, but I want to try and keep the video as short as possible. So we jump back now to Deborah. So Tanya Martin, who you may know is being played, is Sarah Michelle Gellar, who is the boss of forensics. So she happens to have a brief conversation with Deborah and just mentions, hey, have you ever thought about joining, the police force? She's like, no, that's more of the man thing in the family, as far as the Morgans go. And Tanya just makes a passing comment, hey, it'd be nice to have more kick-ass women in the department. And you can see this clicked with Deborah, like, oh, really? This is what she thinks of me. I'm kick-ass, and this would be good. So I think that was the pivotal point as far as Deborah turning the corner and wanting to become a police officer versus going down the route of going to college, volleyball scholarship, and then going that route. So I think this is where we see Deborah having that turning point because of Tanya to become a police officer. So we keep going forward. Dexter has now been asked to help out with the blood drive because he is pre-med. So he goes in there on the, not advice, but being told by Tanya, hey, you need to go do that, help us out. So Dexter is drawing blood for everyone, and he happens to draw Aaron Spencer's blood, and he did cover for Clark Sanders. So Clark Sanders, if you may recall, is one of the uniform officers that has an alternate life outside of the department no one knows about. He came to Dexter advising that he is waiting on an HIV test results, so he's looking for Dexter to help him out. So in order for Dexter to do so, Dexter donated blood twice, so it would appear that Clark donated blood as well, but Clark didn't necessarily want to do that in order for his out of work life to come into his work life, right? So he still wants to keep that very much a secret from the department. So Dexter does that, but at the detriment of Dexter, because now he's donated blood twice, and obviously that's not necessarily a good thing, as we'll come to find out later in the episode. So we move into our next flashback. So our next flashback takes us back to where we see that not only did Doris and Harry decide to adopt Dexter, they decided to adopt Brian as well. So they actually adopted both of them. We never knew that in the original series. It was never brought up, but now it is brought up here that it wasn't just, hey, let's just take Dexter and not Brian. They took Brian in because the social worker had advised, hey, we typically don't like to break up siblings. And Doris advising Harry, hey, they both need a mother. Laura was killed. And she knew that these two boys belonged to Laura, who was the person Harry was having an affair with. So she knew all of that, and she still said, hey, he needs a mother. They both need a mother. We're adopting them both. Now, unfortunately, though, that changes because Brian decides he's going to try and kill Deborah as a baby. So he comes in, says Dexter's hungry. Doris sets baby Deborah down. She's crying. Brian decides to pick up a pillow and tries to smother her, which obviously she doesn't get smothered. Doris saves the baby. And then this leads into them going back to the social work saying, hey, we can't do this. We can't handle Brian. The trauma's too much. So this is where they come and remove Brian and put him in another home, obviously at some point, because this is now where they're officially and fully separated as far as Brian and Dexter. Now we jump back into present time and we see the current version of Brian. And Harry has found out that Brian is stalking Dexter. He finds out through the evidence pictures, see that it's happening, but he's also killing people that he blamed for the separation from his brother. So he is playing bingo. We see him playing bingo a couple times with an elderly lady who we come to find out through the flashback is the social worker. So he does eventually kill her, and we do see a bit of that happening. We see where she is abducted by Brian. Like I mentioned earlier, we have the moment now where Bobby wakes up from his coma to tell Harry he needs to save Dexter. He clearly only says, one thing: save Dexter. And this is after, Harry's confiding in him about what's going on, because they both know about Brian and Dexter and Laura. Bobby knew about that because Bobby's been his partner this whole time. So he's kind of confiding in him, looking for advice. So that's the one time, the one moment we do see Bobby come to. So hopefully we will see Bobby's full recovery, or at least some level of recovery in the final episode. So lastly, we move to Dexter was able to lure Captain Aaron Spencer to an arcade where he did get him on the table. He was going to kill him, but you can see that Dexter can't do so because Dexter doesn't know where Nikki is at. He doesn't know where his son is at. So we're led to believe that he's going to kill him, and there is a bit of a struggle in order to subdue the captain, which I think this is where, we see Dexter having this problem throughout this entire series where he can't ever really subdue his victim. Even now that he's using the M99, he runs into a problem here with, the captain fighting back. We see obviously all that change in the original series where he is obviously a full-grown adult. We know he's taking some level of martial arts training by that point. Obviously that hasn't happened here in the prequel, so he continues to have a problem sneaking up and subduing his victims, and that's what happened here. But it ultimately does, get him on the table. There's a back and forth conversation here, and he does cut off one of Aaron Spencer's fingers. Does lead him to believe he's going to kill him, but decides, hey, no, I'm going to leave you here and I'll see you later. Obviously he didn't completely fully have him wrapped down or confined to the table, because Aaron Spencer was able to easily get up out of this table from the saran wrap, gets his clothes, manages to also grab his finger, the pictures that were left there that he was looking at, gets in his car, and now we then see Dexter sitting outside waiting for all this to happen so he can now follow Aaron to where Nikki is located. At least that's what I would believe, so he can track down where Nikki is at. And that's where we come to the end of the episode. So again, I know that was a lot of information thrown at you very quickly, but again, I wanted to try and get as many of my points out there and keep this episode as short as possible. So I think, as I mentioned before, I think this is one of the better episodes because it's focusing on things like we see, the beginnings of Brian Moser. We see why Deb is becoming a police officer. We're getting more into, I think, the darker side of, who the killer is and what's driving him. I think, as I mentioned earlier on, I still have this opinion of this show. I don't fully believe the show is needed. Now, what we saw in episodes 8 and 9 thus far, I think are good to have. Maybe this could have been more of a mini series and focused on some of the things we've seen in episodes 8 and 9, not necessarily everything from episode 1 through most of episode 7. I don't think was necessary. Obviously, it was just to set up the whole story, which you need to do. However, this probably could have just been a quick mini series, 3 or 4 episodes, and then moved on. This episode, though, I'm giving out of 5 a solid 4. Solid 4. I did enjoy this episode more so than I've enjoyed pretty much the entire rest of the season, because again, I feel like it just had more substance, felt more like a Dexter show or Dexter episode than any of the previous ones. We only have one more episode to go, and that is the name of this episode is called Code Blues, and that comes on February 14th. So this coming week will be the final episode. Now it will be interesting to see whether or not we do see Harry's demise. If we do see Harry die, I don't think we will. I don't think where the show is coming to a conclusion as far as Aaron being the killer and them having to close out that entire story and saving Nikki. I don't see them pushing forward that far into the future where we see Harry take his own life. I think that's just going to be left to what we know as far as the information provided in the original series. So I think they're just going to close out what the stories are here, and then we'll probably see a flash forward to Dexter waking up in the hospital, and then that's where we pick up with Dexter Resurrection. Because if you remember, at episode 1, we were at the end of Dexter New Blood. He's in the hospital and has a flashback, so to speak, which brings us to this prequel series. So I'd imagine we're going to have a flash forward now back to the current time of Dexter Resurrection. So that's going to do it for this summary. Let us know down in the comment section if you've seen episode 9. What did you rate it? Again, we are giving it a solid 4 out of 5. I did enjoy this episode, but it's not a perfect episode. So again, let us know down in the comment section below. And if you're just not interested in the prequel series, again, let us know that as well. Interested to know if you've just kind of jumped in and out of it, or if you've just really ignored it altogether. And if you haven't done so already, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It does help us out a lot. And to all new and existing subscribers, thank you all for the support. It is greatly appreciated, and we are trying to respond to all the comments that are coming in. I do like the interaction with you all, so keep the comments coming. Otherwise, we will see you at the next one. Peace.